Ohio State's going up against a real defense. USC's going north, and Michigan's going northwest for a national championship rematch. Big Ten breakfast is now served.
One take.
Welcome back to Big Ten Breakfast, the show that's part Big Ten preview, but also part Yelp review. Today we're doing a virtual visit to Voula's.
Smoked pork Benedict.
Dan, Voula's in Seattle. It's in the shadow of UW, right on the water. It's thematic because we got a big game taking place in Seattle this weekend, do we not?
We absolutely do. What's better than a Greek diner? What's better than a Greek diner near a college? Like, it's all happening. I looked at this place and it just sang to me. We're going to get through our orders and through some beautiful pictures when we get there. But I think we should start there because the first segment we're doing is called In the Skillet.
Ooh, yeah.
I like saying it like that. In the Skillet.
A little macho man in that, yeah?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm putting the weight of my voice behind it. And what we're going to determine is whose home field advantage feels particularly hot this week, Ty. And obviously, when it gets rocking in Washington Stadium, it becomes very difficult. Things shake. If you've ever seen those cameras, they're shaking when things are getting especially loud when Washington is good. And we think Washington is likely pretty good this year. We'll see what happens. Tough loss at Rutgers last Friday. But Washington hosting Michigan. Do you believe that the environment in Seattle will be a significant reason why Washington can win this game against Michigan? Yes or no, Mr. Handsome Ty?
I do. I absolutely do. This is Michigan's first road game. And we know that they've got some questions about their quarterback situation, just their offense as a whole.
That was very nice of you. They've got some questions about quarterback. You have more than that, Ty.
Well, they do. I'm trying to be generous here.
I know. You're a pro.
Obviously, the system now that they are running, Sherrone Moore, first-time full-time head coach, Alex Orji, after some quarterback jockeying back and forth. They have now settled with him over the last 2 weeks. He's thrown for about 120 yards. It has not been an effective passing offense. To now take that on the road into an environment where obviously the crowd is going to be pretty psyched for a national championship rematch. They want to get revenge on the Michigan Wolverines for what happened in that title game when they lost by 21. So I can't help but think that it's got to be a factor, if only because Michigan has not done it yet with this quarterback, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Michigan had a decent quarterback, I think it would be difficult, and they don't in this moment. They have a decent athlete at quarterback, a very good athlete at quarterback, but they've been one of the worst throwing teams in the country and have a really nasty case of the runs in that. That's all they can do. And going to Washington to take on this Husky team, which has been decent up front, has run the ball really well, very quietly. Jonah Coleman has had an excellent season for the Huskies. Now, they've made mistakes, right? They've lost winnable moments. They've lost winnable games, Wazoo, Rutgers. But I don't know. The motivation is going to be there within that hot skillet of a stadium. So I don't know. I think that's going to be a huge factor in why Washington wins this game outright, Ty. Yeah, that's what I'm saying right now. They get like quote unquote revenge because it's like none of the players or coaches who coached in the national championship game and some of the players who played for Michigan. But nonetheless, I think it'll feel good for Michigan to go down for those Husky fans.
It's essentially a team of mercenaries for Washington because mass roster turnover, really mass turnover on both sides of this. Not as much from the personnel side of things for Michigan, but obviously a lot of new coaches, at least in new positions within that coaching staff. I don't think Michigan loses this game. I think last week with Washington playing Rutgers and what Kyle Monangai did to the Huskies defense, that is going to serve as something of a template for Sherrone Moore. If he can hand the ball off 45 times, he's more than willing to do just that. I think it's close. I do think the environment does play something of a factor. I've got it 24-21 Michigan coming out on top.
Okay. All right. So we disagree a little bit here. Another skillet, Ty. And we talked about, this is a nice, easy segue here.
Double shot, double cream, double froth.
We talked about Al's in Dinkytown in Minneapolis,
Oh,
right by.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I signed up for.
Big home game for Minnesota. USC, a very impressive comeback win over Wisconsin last week. Minnesota, not a great past couple weeks, but nonetheless, what do you think about this crowd providing for a hot environment, Ty, where an opposing team, a road team, comes in and gets a little fried?
Was that a little bit of an oxymoron there? The hot home environment up in the north against
It's not cold right now up here, Ty. It's fine.
USC going up to Minnesota. I can't imagine that the crowd wouldn't be pretty psyched up for this matchup. I mean, this is going to be true for a lot of these bigger Big Ten matchups that we discuss here today.
Yeah.
But this is one of those matchups, truly, when we did our preseason previews on the podcast, I called this one out as one where I thought USC could lose.
Sure.
They come into this game, depends where you look, about a one-score favorite or so. It would not surprise me if Minnesota slows this game down, if Minnesota uses its defense and somehow finds a way to keep this one close. Where I struggle a little bit, though,
is
with the Minnesota offense, because I don't know what it is. I still like Max Brosmer. I still like some of the pieces that they've got on this offense with the running back, with obviously the wide receiving core out wide. I think this is a good enough offense, assuming they can assemble the pieces and assemble the parts and get more of a forward push than we have seen so far. Now, there have been some signs of life on that front, and I'm going to remain optimistic.
One quarter against Michigan. Yeah.
One quarter. But there have been some signs of life that maybe they're kind of pulling through the clouds here and emerging. So provided they can continue that momentum, I really like their chances here to keep this one close and maybe even pull an upset at home at night in Minneapolis. But I need to see that trend continue. And I need to watch like 15 minutes of this game before I'm willing to jump aboard that. Right now, I think USC wins. I think Minnesota keeps it close, probably within that number. But it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking about this game on Sunday morning and there was an upset.
Yeah, I think the crowd's going to be super into it. I just don't think Minnesota's good enough at college football to win this game and have it be fully affected. I think USC, especially with how their defense has gotten better and how they're able to come back. And, it's a new team, right? It's a new quarterback, a lot of new pieces on both sides of the ball, either stepping into bigger roles or transferring in. But no, Minnesota, unfortunately for them and unfortunately for Minnesota fans, like they're one of the great unchanged offenses statistically this season that they just haven't been able to get it together with any sort of consistency. So I'm out. I think the skillet is lukewarm in Minneapolis right now.
But is Minnesota's defense good enough to hold down USC? Because I think
who knows?
I think on some level it comes down to that.
Right.
We know that there are questions about that Minnesota offense and what they can or can't do, what the philosophy is, what PJ Fleck's role in all of this is. That's kind of like a bigger question. But specifically with regard to this game, if Minnesota's defense cannot curtail the USC offense, this is going to be ball game pretty quickly, because I don't think we can count on Minnesota's offense to score a boatload of points.
No, Ty, you nailed it. I don't think we can count on Minnesota's offense to score a boatload of points. Absolutely correct. I like USC here. I'm going to give you a wild card skillet here, Ty. Right on the lake. We were there a few weeks ago. Northwestern hosting the War Machine. That is Indiana football. And here's why. Okay, so maybe it's one of those like micro skillets, right? It can handle one little fried egg. You're not getting a whole hash out of it. But Northwestern's quote unquote stadium on the lake, hosting a Hoosier team that was a little bit sloppy on offense last week for a stretch, that I think is heading into a bye week next week. But I think situationally, I looked it up, could be like 15 to 20 mile an hour gusts, Ty.
Oh, man.
On the lake for Curtis Rourke, coming off of an uneven performance that he improved over the course of. Xander Mueller and the Northwestern front, pretty strong this year. He's Mr. Havoc right there, man. Xander Mueller. Learn the name, remember the name, treasure the name.
Love a good Xander, yeah.
Love a good Xander. The defensive line is good. The offense has not been good this year. But can they win this game 13-10? Stranger things has happened. Stranger things have happened in Evanston, Ty.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong to bring up the wind and the lake factor, because we were there and the weather was awful.
Like, it has to get somebody, right?
It's got to get somebody. And I think it's fair to look at this one and say, could it be Indiana? Indiana's got a full head of steam right now. Obviously, the offense is kind of the talk of the Big Ten. So I understand why you would bring that up. My counterpoint would be that Indiana also has been really good at running the football. Statistically speaking, depending on which stats you look at, which stats you like, we like some of the advanced stuff. Maybe the best rushing attack in America through a couple weeks of the season, through 5 weeks out of the year. I like their two-headed monster at running back, and I think they will find a way to get enough push on the ground so that it doesn't have to be about the aerial assault led by Curtis Rourke. I think they could get enough on the ground to make it more of a balanced attack. So they don't have to rely on that and don't have to worry about the wind. But that being said, I know it's a different stadium. It's not Ryan Field.
No.
But it feels like somebody goes to Northwestern and struggles every year. And you never quite know who it's going to be. And given the fact that Indiana has been flying high and has been sort of on top of the world here, it would not surprise me again if we're talking about this Sunday morning as either an upset or a game that we look back on and say, wow, this was one where you took a screenshot of it and sent it to me in Slack, right? One of those that this is a little bit more uncomfortable than we expected.
Yeah, it's 7-6 Indiana with 11:38 left in the fourth quarter, where, Northwestern's just going to get a somebody or somebodies with this weird field situation. They've got Wisconsin with a backup quarterback, I think in a week or two. I don't know, man. I just think this is in the DNA of this tiny, tiny little skillet, this tiny little stadium on the lake. I don't know. I think it's a bear trap this week to me.
It's a great environment for a game. It is. Yes. It is one of one. It is truly unique in college football. So that in and of itself makes it a cool setting for any kind of big game. I don't think at the start of the year this was viewed as one of those potential big games because Indiana has really come out of nowhere in a sense with Curt Cignetti and all the momentum that they have been able to build here in the early part of the season. So I'm not sure if this is the game. If not this week, I could certainly see it happening against Wisconsin given their state of affairs.
Next segment, Ty, who's got that juice? And I don't know if you're a juice fan with your breakfast, if you like fresh squeezed juice, if you like, pulp, a little bit of pulp, no pulp.
I'm a
I don't
no
know
pulp
where you
guy.
stand.
No, I'm no
full
pulp.
no pulp.
No pulp.
I like a light pulp, Ty.
No.
I like a tiny little bit of grit.
Filter that out
with my juice.
I don't need dirt in my juice.
I just don't know what I signed up for.
I don't need it. I just want the juice.
Okay, fair enough. Agree to disagree. But we're talking about juice in a good way. As you know, obviously, you march through your own high school's hallways saying, Ty's got that juice in the third person. Everybody knows that about you. Who's got that juice right now in the Big Ten, either heading into this week or based on performances from the past couple weeks or something that you are just projecting forward for the rest of the season? Is there a specific, let's go with position groups, not specific players, not full-on teams, position groupings that you feel like have that specific pulp-free juice?
Penn State's ground assault right now.
Ooh.
Penn State's ground assault.
Okay.
This is really important to the success of the project this year. Last year.
The project.
Yes, I'm talking about this in construction terms, okay?
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it.
Last year, they did not have any pop on the ground. And that was a pretty drastic departure from what we saw in 2022. To not have it last year almost maimed the offense. It turned it into something that we didn't expect it to be, that I think made it harder for them to score points and move the ball against better opponents. This year so far, they have gotten much closer back, I should say, to what they did in 2022. They are running again for larger chunks of yards. That has made the offense much better as a result. It has taken some of the pressure off of Drew Aller. Assuming the passing game can come around, that they can continue to develop some of those targets out wide, whether it's Tyler Warren out of the tight end position, whether it's Harrison Wallace out wide, whether we get to see more of Julian Fleming at some point this season, all of that remains to be seen, but I think it's all contingent on the ground attack, and it does seem as if that is improving. Now, there has been some weirdness.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
There has been some weirdness because Nick Singleton was not present during one of the viewing windows at practice this week when Penn State had media there to see, and James Franklin was cryptic as to why. I hope that's not a thing. I have no idea what's going on there. That's my only cause for pause. But all that being said, the ground attack, broadly speaking, has been much better, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, cryptic James Franklin, the worst superhero of them all.
The worst.
It was sort of like, that's about all I can tell you for now. You're like, what? And like, don't ask any more questions.
Yeah,
Why not?
there was a like CIA, it's classified edge to the way that he answered questions from media. That did not leave me as a Penn State alum feeling all that comforted. Hopefully there's not more to the story. Maybe he was just sick dealing with a cold or something. And James Franklin, in the spirit of gamesmanship, didn't want to give too much away to A ferocious opponent.
UCLA? They're 28-point favorites?
UCLA? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go with another unit that has no questions. How about that? We're talking about James Franklin questions. The Ohio State offensive line thus far.
Oh.
Big question coming into the season, bringing in the Alabama center who had some snap issues. Obviously, the left tackle was dealing with some penalty issues last season, and they were allowing too much pressure, all things considered, in that offense. Come over, Chip Kelly, come on down, figure things out with Justin Fry, the offensive line coach, who he coached with before at UCLA. And this unit has been, granted, against the schedule that they've played, incredible.
No.
Right? That they've opened up huge lanes in the rushing game, that they've protected Will Howard very, very impressively. This has been a strength of this team that is just loaded with strengths. The offensive line has answered the bell really, really nicely against Michigan State, Ed Marshall, and Western Michigan and Akron, right? Grain of salt a little bit, but I don't know. They're taking care of business like a good offensive line should against this schedule, and I think they deserve a little bit. What are the children saying? The flowers that I'm currently giving them?
Got to give them their flowers. Yeah.
I'm giving them those flowers. Ty, the Ohio State offensive line. Big matchup next week, though. It's Iowa this week, which I think is a sizable matchup. Oregon in Eugene next week. You got the narratives everywhere. Ohio State, Oregon, Chip Kelly, blah, blah, blah. The Iowa game's going to be interesting. This is not an incredible Iowa defensive line, or at least they haven't performed like one this year. They've been fine. They've been decent, but they haven't been world beaters. This is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what Ohio State looks like through the air against Iowa, because I think that's the real mismatch. Iowa so far has given up a bunch of big plays through the air, and if they continue to do so this week against an aerial assault like Ohio State, it's going to be ball game. It's going to be over very quickly.
Yeah.
I think we have come to trust this Iowa defense over the years that they will figure out some way to keep these games close. But this does have at least the early indicators of a big time mismatch where Ohio State goes up early and Iowa just doesn't have the arsenal on offense to find any way to pick back into the thing.
I agree. I'm going to go bonus juice right now, Ty. How about USC? How about USC? We talked about Minnesota. I don't know what the appropriate juice analogy is here. Maybe like grapefruit juice, right?
Okay.
I don't know, grapefruit juice, lemon juice, that the defense has been a little bit salty, a little bit tangy, Ty. It helps the whole product go down easy, but it's a little bit tangy. I'm going far afield here.
Yeah.
But specifically the linebackers for USC have been very strong, both off of the edge. Anthony Lucas, technically an outside linebacker, but Eric Gentry and Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, these guys have been making plays. And I know we saw the end of that Michigan game. Those were UCLA players, as far as I'm concerned. Those were UCLA transfers. The USC linebacking core has been a strength this year of this team. They've made a ton of plays. They've been in the backfield. They've been solid tackling. I think their defense is actually ahead of Michigan's defense in terms of points per drive allowed. It can get turned around. That's a lesson here. If you hire the right coach, if you run the right system, if you communicate really well with the players, what your intentions are on defense, USC has done a fantastic job. They've played real opponents this year, and LSU, kind of with Wisconsin, whatever. Michigan for sure. I don't know. I'm very happy from afar for USC people, especially the ones in my life.
Well, that would be a great story, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would be a great story if suddenly this is a position group that turns around after years of turmoil. I mean, they're just tackling better.
Yeah.
They're tackling again in what feels like for the first time, tackling again. So, I mean, that in and of itself, I think is a huge improvement and speaks volumes about Dan Lynn. Whether or not it's USC or UCLA players, it matters not. They're on USC now.
Yeah.
And if they're able to, get out of this bad habit that they've had over the years of just trying to tackle everybody with their arms, they'll be better for it. They'll win a lot of games in the Big Ten.
I agree. And we have two of our juicers playing against each other, right? We've got the USC linebackers trying to take on the rushing attack from Penn State next week.
I walk into a room.
Here's my last question to you before we get into Voula's. Do you have like a lock pick of the week, right? There's a lot of big games. I know you like the Washington game for Michigan. Is there a specific game where you're just like, guys, I'm telling you, this is the most obvious call?
Oh, the most obvious call this week, I think it's clear. It's
911, what is your emergency? Please.
I hesitate to use the word free money as you and I are proprietors of our own casino, SV Bet. Gambling problem. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But
911, what is your emergency?
I didn't even, when they asked me how much I wanted to wager on this game, I just gave them my routing number and my account number. I just said, just a blank check. It's a no-brainer.
I feel the same way about ordering food at Voula's in Seattle ahead of the Washington-Michigan game. My order right now, I know you're going to have a lot more thoughts here, but my order, I'm going with the Big Voula. It's a straightforward dish, sort of. You got your eggs, you have your bacon, you have your hash browns. Always get your hash browns well done. Always. I promise you, nobody ever regrets ordering hash browns well done.
Are you going the full Nance with it? Do you want to see char on the hash brown or just crispy enough when you bite into it?
I do what my dad does, and I say, hash browns well done.
And burn them.
That's what I say.
Burn them.
And they never will put a stack of black hash browns on a plate.
No.
But it sends the message, Ty. You leave no doubt with your order. That's my philosophy.
Burn them.
But the Big Voula also comes with Greek sausages. I assume it's like, I looked it up, Luka Niko is like the most well-known. There's like herbs and seeds and stuff. It looks delicious to me, and they're big on the Greek element to this diner. So I'm going Big Voula.
I'm going with the hobo.
It's a hashy dish, right?
Yeah. It's a hashy dish. I mean, if you've watched this show, you can see that there's been more of a trend developing here, but I love a good hash. This was also on the section of the menu that's like Guy Fieri approved, which I see that, my eye is drawn to it. That's why I got the hair a little bit crazy today in honor of Voula's and Guy Fieri.
Right.
I'm a fan of the hobo. I like a good hash. I figure when in Rome, again, we got to order one of the special dishes. We can't not do that.
Look, if it's Guy Fieri approved.
Wow, that is good.
Right? And you're the comptroller of Flavortown, Ty. I'm trying to think of like the most bureaucratic. I go for it. That looks great to me. The hobo.
Voula's in the shadow of UW. If you're going to be out there, if you're watching this and you're going to be out there, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear about your experience. It looks like a fine place to enjoy.
Or if you disagree, somewhere else. I'm open to whatever. If you're going to a game at UW, tell me where I need to eat breakfast. I love breakfast any way I can get it near a university. It's great by me.
Love it.
So
absolutely love it.
Thanks everybody for watching Big Ten Breakfast. Those are our picks. Those are our juices. Those are our skillets. Those are our picks from Voula's in Seattle. Thank you again. See you soon.